Do you want to create the first galactic empire? If so, you've come to the right place. Hey guys, I'm Bizzle, and today I'm going to cover Outpost optimization in Starfield in a step-by-step guide on how to create a thriving industrial empire. This is part 1 of a multi-part series, so be sure to subscribe to stay updated on later parts. Let's get started. To begin, I'll front-load the information, so if you don't want the details and just want to know what resources you'll need to start your outposts, I'll tell you that in just a second. But if you want a step-by-step guide to making an empire, follow along. Here are the resources you want to focus on when starting outposts. Alkanes, aluminum, beryllium, cobalt, copper, ionic liquids, iron, nickel, silver, tetrafluorides, titanium, and tungsten. These are the main resources you'll need for buildings and to craft any tier 1 manufactured resources you might need. If that's all you wanted, thank you for stopping by. But if you follow along, by the end of the video, you should have the building blocks to expand your fledgling colonies to an empire. I've done the math and the supply chain logistics, so you don't have to, because trust me, it's a lot of work. This is what your supply chain should look like at the end of part 1. The red line means that the outpost is not currently extracting the resource, but they are present. This is what your supply chain should look like at the end of part 2. As you can tell, there's going to be a whole lot more going on, so be sure to follow along. The blue line means that the resource is being exported, and the green line means that the resource is being imported. The hardest part is organization and managing cargo links, but don't worry, because I did it all for you. In the description, I've linked to a Google document that has the recipes for all tier 1 buildings and manufactured resources. There will also be a link to the part 1 supply chain should you need it. You will not need any points into botany, zoology, outpost management, planetary habitation, or outpost engineering for this part, but you will eventually, so stock up on some perk points before part 2. You will need some money and resources to get started, which I've listed out for you. Here are the resources you'll need to get started. 716 aluminum, 120 beryllium, 20 cobalt, 198 copper, 432 iron, 120 nickel, 105 tungsten, and 108 adaptive frames. Or, if you don't have all the manufactured resources or don't want to go around buying them, here's what you'll need as raw resources. Almost everything will stay the same, except aluminum and iron will increase by 108. If you don't have enough resources to build everything all at once, I've ordered a list of resources that will extract from the most important to the least, so build your outposts in order if you have this problem. These resources will allow you to build 45 mineral extractors, 5 liquid extractors, 10 gas extractors, 60 solar arrays, 10 wind turbines, 27 small solid storage containers, 3 small liquid containers, and 6 small gas containers. This means that each resource has 5 extractors and 3 storage containers. Without any points into the planetary habitation perk, you're only allowed to have 8 outposts to start, and there are 12 resources listed, so you'll need to have most outposts double up. It's not so important later on, but early on it is especially important to ensure we maximize the utility of each outpost. If you have some skill points available now, the scanning skill will make your life a little easier, but if not, I'll tell you where to settle, which should help a little. Every empire starts somewhere, and ours starts in the Jaffa System. The Jaffa System is insanely strong for simply how many colonizable planets there are without any points into planetary habitation. The reason we want as many outposts in the same system, especially early on, is to reduce the number of intersystem cargo links we'll need, which will reduce the number of outposts that we'll need that exclusively mine helium-3 just to support the intersystem cargo links. In the Jaffa System, there are 17 colonizable planets and moons. Of them, 8 can be colonized without planetary habitation. And after just 1 point, you can colonize another 8. It is perfect for early settlers and has almost all the resources you need. Again, here are the planets in order that we'll be settling and the resources we're going to be extracting from each. On Jaffa 4a, we'll be extracting aluminum and beryllium. In part 2, we'll also be extracting helium-3, so look for a spot with all three resources. On Jaffa 1a, extract both alkanes and iron. If you find a location with helium-3 as well, all the better, as it will ease the strain of your supply chain later, but I didn't, so it's okay if you don't. On Jaffa 5a, copper and tetrafluorides. On Jaffa 2a, look for cobalt, nickel, and palladium in the hills. On Jaffa 7b, we'll be extracting titanium and tungsten for now, but in part 3, we'll also be extracting dysprosium, so look for a location with all three. You might even be able to find a spot with lead as well, but it isn't necessary. You can find them all together in the rocky desert biome. Outside of the Jaffa system, to the quote-unquote north, is Beta Marae, and to the south is Zeta Ophiuchi. On Beta Marae 3, all we need is ionic liquids, but you can easily find it together with copper in the frozen hills. But it's not necessary as we're already mining it on Jaffa 5a. And finally, on Zeta Ophiuchi 1, find a location with silver, tantalum, and ytterbium in the mountains. You can often find them with chlorine and iron as well, but those aren't necessary. So to recap, in white are the resources you should be extracting by the end of part 1, and in blue are the resources we will eventually extract, and in orange are resources you can bundle up with the others but are not needed for automated fabrication as far as I can tell. But again, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. If you find a spot with more resources than even I have, all the better. If you did exactly as I did, you should have one more outpost available. I've left this one open for you to use as your personal base if you wish. Otherwise, we won't be needing it in part 1. Finding a spot to build your outpost is probably the most difficult and boring part. Because each of the planet's surfaces are procedurally generated, you're kind of on your own here. Once you've found the spot you want to settle, I would recommend only building about 4 or 5 resource extractors per resource at a time. If you want to build more, that's fine, but the list of resources I provided doesn't account for any more than 5 resource extractors per resource. This is to minimize the number of resources you'll need to get started, because as you build your mining settlements, your extractors will be busy replenishing your stock. Besides, you'll eventually have much more efficient extractors, so it doesn't make much sense in the long term to place too many tier 1 extractors. Around part 4, we'll dive into upgrading our outposts as we'll eventually need many more resources to maximize the input-output efficiency of our fabricators. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, let's just focus on getting started. Next, determine how you want to power your extractors. If the atmosphere isn't thick enough, you might be producing less power with wind turbines than if you use solar panels. By following the list of required resources, you should have enough resources, plus a little extra for leeway, to make enough solar arrays and wind turbines for the entire part 1 guide, if you use the most efficient one on each planet. Once your extractors are all powered up, you'll want to find a nice location to put your storage containers. I usually put them close to the extractors so I know exactly what's in them, as there's no exterior identifiers. I recommend 3 storage containers per resource, but you can put fewer, but I'd not account for more on my list. Link your miners of the same resource to a single container, and then link that container to the next. This way they will all funnel into the last container. After you've done that to all the outposts I listed, you should be passively producing all the materials you'll need to expand later, and to build any manufactured resources you want, except polytextiles. That would require botany and zoology, but we'll get into that in part 2.
Looks like you missed your calling.
Speaking of part 2, you will need at least 1 point into botany, zoology, and planetary habitation. You will not need any points into outpost management or outpost engineering. So to end the video, your supply chain should look something like this. It's not much of a chain, but we'll address that in part 2. If you have resources in your outpost that I don't, that's fine and all the better. For example, helium-3 in Jaffa 1 will help ease the demand of helium across your supply chain. Lead in Jaffa 7b is helpful to have as it's used as building materials, but it's not used in automated manufacturing, so it's okay not to have. Same for chlorine in Zeta Ophiuchi 1. These are the organic resources of the planet that we will be able to farm in part 2. Fiber, polymer, sealants will all be used in later parts, the rest are not used in manufacturing. If you like the content, please consider liking, and with that said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in part 2, where we will start automating the crafting and begin shipping resources across our settlements. So once again, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time. Bye bye now.